Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to today is Saturday, 20th of September. And this is a special little standalone edition because anyone watching on Sunday may have noticed a glaring error in something I said about the Great Fire of Northampton. Now, I asked, do you remember? I said, do you know when that was? And I was like, 1965, and it seemed too early to me. I thought, well, 1965, you think of great fires, and I think, back to areas where everything's made of wood and, going back a long time. Well, yes, in actual fact, it was a long time ago, 1675. So just a little bit off on the date there. And I think that's worth a correction, isn't it? Because anyone thinking, hold on, 30 years ago, there was a great fire in Northampton. No, no, no. Please rest assured, 1675 it was in reality. That's when it really happened. So I thought, we need to learn a bit. Well, I need to learn a bit about that after making such a glaring error. But I think, that's a good kick at the bum to learn something. So I printed out some information about the Great Fire of Northampton, and I think I'll go through it with you this evening. So that's the plan for tonight's show, everyone. This is MC Scott coming live at you from Northampton, UK, England. Welcome aboard. If this is the first time you've joined me, fantastic, awesome. Welcome aboard. Otherwise, if you're not live, perhaps you'll see on later on when it's all been processed. Lovely, that'll be nice. So without further ado, I'm expecting a coffee to be delivered any moment by CHR Crystal, who's in the kitchen now pouring me a coffee. Lovely. So I said the Great Fire of Northampton was in 1965, and it isn't. It was actually 1675. But I thought, what did go on in Northampton in 1965? I'm sure there's some things that went on here that are worthy of note. And yeah, sure enough, there are 5 interesting things I found. Who knew this? Now, this is a lovely fact. I'm really pleased to have known this, and it's going to stick in my mind because of all of this. 1965, Northampton was designated a new town. How cool is that? Now, of course, still hoping, aren't we, to get city status. And fingers crossed, within my lifetime, I'll see Northampton become a city. That would really tickle me. But will that happen? I hope so. I hope that Northampton becomes a city. But who would have thought we were designated a new town in 1965? A new town. Northampton was officially designated that title by the government. How cool is that? I never in a million years would have guessed that. Anyway, but so since 1675, Northampton has indeed then been rebuilt, hasn't it? And it's been rebuilt so well. The population's expanding. I think the town's doing really well. It's always been a hub of operations, Northampton, because we're centrally located. Great transport links, you see. I mean, if you choose to go by train, you just zip down on the line there, very easy. M1 motorway connects you everywhere, and that's why. Thank you, Crystal. That's perfect, lovely, and that is why a lot of businesses. That's why our retail areas are very prosperous. Not retail. Where you get the industrial estates with all the offices and factories and what have you. Not even factories, more sort of distribution warehouses, because making use of these transport links in Northampton. Ever so handy. So that's why we've grown rapidly because people have had to support all these workers, and so communities build up of new neighbours and what have you to cater for all the jobs that have been created in this area. And to think as well, I mean, I don't know much about the information, but it has been announced that Northampton's going to be like a tech hub going forward as well. So Northampton can't knock Northampton out, especially when it comes to cricket. 1965. Now our cricket players, where have we got cricket players? Mushtaq Mohammed. Cricket fans will know his name, won't they? Because he was famous in Northampton. He was the first Pakistani player to play in Northamptonshire, and he played for us. Played for us in 1965, and we came second in the county championship. How cool! That's cool as well. But this gentleman, Mushtaq Mohammed, went on to captain the Northampton cricket team and to win the Gillette Cup in 1971. 2 years before I was born, he was rocking it at the old cricket there. What a fantastic chap. So he proved obviously to be a good player to end up captaining our team and captained us to victory 1971. Wonderful. So there's a name I've learnt as well. How about that? Nice. Good to know. We can see rugby, of course. Northampton's great at the old rugby, of course. But to learn some more information about cricket, that's marvellous. Uh, so, yeah, 1965, we were designated a new town. Now, what's this? Northampton, the Northampton Order. Now, that was a key parliamentary action that was discussed in March that year, and it was concerned with the extension of the borough's boundaries. Oh, goodness me, well, they're just growing all the time, aren't they? To include approximately 10,000 new electors or residents, if you like, people that are going to be able to cast their votes. So 10,000, I mean, that's a big figure. And to think then, 10,000, they were probably thinking, good Lord, that's huge growth. Well, it's grown even more, a preparatory step for the coming new town growth. So yes, our boundaries were extended in 1965 as well to cater for this growth. Um, all these companies making use of the great connection in from Northampton, whether you're going by car, road, you name it. And then also we can get down to Heathrow easy enough. Gatwick's not too much of a trauma to get to. A lot of people like using Gatwick, don't they, over Heathrow, in all fairness. But we go, yeah, I like that. Now, what have I got here? Local sports at a high. Local sports at a high. So more sports stuff. So in 1965, the Northampton Town Football Club, the Cobblers, preparing for their only season in the top tier of English. Oh, bless. Well, of course, those that follow the Cobblers, um, pending, hopefully, haven't got any too many heart conditions out there if you do, because they're not doing great this season. We need them to get a bit of oomph and start perking up. Fingers crossed, for the end of the season, we won't get relegated or anything. No, hope not. But that year in 1965, preparing for the only session in the first division. Well, of course, that was when it was all first division. Now we've got the Premier, haven't we, and all this. But then it was just first, second, third, and fourth. And being in the first, of course, that would have been a big deal. And we were there in 1965, apparently. So they achieved the promotion at the end of 1964 to 1965 into um, that first uh, league, and that was an unprecedented high for the club. So how about that? So 8 years before I was born, in 1965, that was when Northampton was at their peak in football. Because I knew that they'd been they've been in the upper leagues. I knew that. Didn't know when though. Now we know. So we're going to get back there, haven't we, boys and girls? Get us back. That'll be a journey and a half. That'll perhaps take a long time. But if I can see that in my lifetime, wouldn't that be marvellous? Get us into the what would have been the first division, but it was now Champions League and all that sort of thing, isn't it? Oh, so I'm glad the Cobblers are in this list of top 5 interesting facts about Northampton in 1965. First listing of yeah, the Derngate, or the Derngate, as a Northamptonian might say, the Derngate Theatre. The Charles Rennie Mackintosh House, 78, the Derngate. Well, that's worth a visit. I've looked at their website. It's a really smart place. Now, what's it say about it in 1965? And I have been there. I've visited. So, 78 Derngate. Why is it famous? Well, Rene Mackintosh House features the only house interior in England designed by the celebrated architect Charles Rennie Mackintosh, and that was first listed as a building of architectural and historical interest in 1965. Marvellous. That's lovely. So there's some things that happened in Northampton. Oh, look, that's it. You must remember the chair isn't actually in an upright position. So that was in Northampton, but 1965 around the world. What might have happened then? Let's have a look at down this list. So I've got 10 world events from 1965. Sadly, there was an escalation in the Vietnam War in that year when 3,500 Marines, American Marines, of course, landed at Da Nang in South Vietnam. So yes, 1965. So to think it was escalating in 1965, and of course didn't end until after 1970. So that's incredible. Voting Rights Act signed by President Lyndon B. Johnson. The Voting Rights Act of 1965. That was in 6th of August in 1965. The Voting Rights Act. Now, what was that? That was a landmark piece of legislation that outlawed discriminatory practices like literacy tests and poll taxes used to prevent African Americans from voting. So there we are. That was a progression there in the fact that if that was halted, if some discriminatory practices were halted by the introduction of that Voting Rights Act in 1965, can it be such a bad thing? I don't know. I'm saying yes. I think that's probably a good thing, but of course I don't know the ins and outs of what was going on at that time, do I? I was born in 1973. So assassination of Malcolm X. Oh, yeah. Well, of course, if you whether you know of Malcolm X or not, that's a name. Perhaps it will ring a bell for you. But the African American Muslim minister, unfortunately, he was a human rights activist as well. Malcolm X was assassinated on the 21st of February that year in 1965, and he was given a speech at Audubon Ballroom in Harlem, New York. Oh. So yes, whatever your views of him, he was executed, assassinated is the word, isn't it, in 1965. First spacewalk. That's good, isn't it? The first spacewalk, Soviet cosmonaut Alexei Leonov. He became the first human to conduct a spacewalk. Well, I never. That takes extreme courage, doesn't it, to go out into the extremes of space wearing nothing but a suit. That takes courage. Yeah, so spacewalks taking place in 1965. Yeah, that's incredible, isn't it? Well, the Russians were, they're throwing a lot of their money into the space race, and of course, it's all part of the Cold War, isn't it? So it's a case of, in this instance, whether it'll be America and Russia flexing their space prowess, um, which culminated, of course, in allegedly that USA landed on the moon. How cool is that? Now, you know, whether you believe that or not. You see, this day and age of conspiracies, people question everything, don't they? But yeah, there we have it. Um, the first spacewalk was actually done by a Russian. So now, who knows of the country Rhodesia? They declared, what did they declare? UDI. So that's something independence. I'm gonna suggest, right? UDI stands for unilaterally declared independence. So Rhodesia gained their independence from the United Kingdom, no less, in that year of 1965. Now, you might think, who's Rhodesia? Well, apparently that led to an international crisis and sanctions being introduced. So that kicked up a stink, didn't it? But so Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe, you see. So perhaps if you haven't heard of the name Rhodesia, you perhaps would have heard of Zimbabwe. And Zimbabwe was called Rhodesia. Wow, what a day. I sound wowing all the time. Every day's a school day, isn't it, ladies and gentlemen? So the 1965 as well, the Indo-Pakistani War. Now, did it break out? Yes, it did. It broke out in August to September of that year over the disputed region of Kashmir. Now, of course, you'll see that's a problematic border even now, which fled up a bit recently. I haven't heard of much about that, so I'm hoping that's all calmed down on that border, that stretch of border. between India and Pakistan. Um, Winston Churchill's death and funeral. Oh, okay, so that's 1965 as well, and he died at the age of 90. What an age for a man who lived the way he did. Eh? He survived a good old age. He liked his drink, didn't he, old Winston Churchill? Well, I certainly have in my life enjoyed a drink, so I can relate to that. Um, yeah, he passed away on the 24th of January at the age of 90. He was given a state funeral, of course, one of the world's largest at the time. You'd expect that, wouldn't you, from a fine character like, well, a fine, outstanding person like Winston Churchill? You'd expect a massive, and it was indeed the largest in world history state funeral. That's the least you'd expect, isn't it? And that brought together heads of state from across the globe, as well as you might imagine. Incredible, incredible man. The Watts riots. A major outbreak of civil unrest, known as the Watts riots, occurred in the Watts neighborhood of Los Angeles in California. So from August the 11th to August the 16th of 1965, there were tensions between the police and the African American community in Los Angeles, California, in the area of Watts. Well, it's an international big top 10 big world event. So this obviously must have been a big thing at the time before my day, but known as the Watts riot. Yeah, okay. So that occurred in 1965, of course, in August. I wonder, here we are. So also in August, we got Singapore's independence as well. Oh, how did they get their independence? Well, it turns out they were expelled from the Federation of Malaysia. How do you get expelled from that? Did they want to be expelled? I wonder. And they then became an independent sovereign nation, Singapore, a significant event in Southeast Asian history. Well, of course, when a map changes, it is rather significant, isn't it? Tightening of maps, people editing their atlases to reflect the changes. Wow. And the first orbital rendezvous, I'm guessing. All right, let's see. Is that, yeah, okay. Not what I guessed. So the USA Gemini space program achieved a major milestone in December of 1965 when Gemini 6A and 7 performed the first controlled rendezvous in Earth orbit, a critical step towards the moon landing. Yeah. Well, all these small achievements, whilst big in their own right, were indeed. They planned it out very carefully, and by the time they did land on the moon, they'd done all their various like rendezvous and dock, because they've got a dock and things like that, haven't they, and all these things. So all takes practice. I'm glad so there we are in that year. So what we have here is the Russians conducting the first spacewalk. But what is rather good, I'm glad to say that later in the year, the US did a major milestone in spacing by conducting the first orbital rendezvous. So getting the Americans bounce it back into, the ball's back in their court again. Thank goodness. That's great. Right, lovely. So there's some top 10 facts about the world of 1965. But that's not what today's show is particularly about. I mean, I hope you learned a little something there, but the Great Fire of Northampton actually did happen in 1675. Now, what on earth happened there? No. Let's have a look. Yeah. Here it is. So what we have here is a wee graphic of Northampton. Although you can see the outlines of Northampton. There's NN3 there, which is where I am in the world right now, live as we speak. Now, you'll see from that amazing graphic that there's an area in the middle that's shaded. There's the outline of Northampton around it at the time, and you'll see All Saints Church, which escapes the spread of the fire because it's not in that darkened area. So NN3 escaped the area too. So it didn't, but you'll see, look, the town centre and the market square destroyed, and because that wind blowing in from the west there, you can see that fan. That's what fanned them flames in the direction it went, because the wind was coming in from the west, and you see the fire started in St Mary's Street. Is my finger even showing? No, no, it's not. This finger, like my pointer finger, it wasn't showing. Let's try again. All right, let's try again. Let's get the pointy finger working. I don't want to use my penis extender. I just want to use my finger. Oh yeah. So we got St Mary's Street. That's where the fire stand, and then started, and then it fanned because of the wind coming in from the west, and spread to the area where you can see coloured darker within the outline. So that's how it went down then. So you see the fire started off from some sparks in St Mary's Street, and went on to cause massive damage, awful. So what was Northampton like back in 1970? Back in 1675? Well, Northampton is historically a market town, still is, technically a market town in the sense that we have a market square, but it's been refurbished and redone, and I'm looking forward to seeing how popular that becomes. Because I think to myself that would actually be, if Chris and I were to go into town, I'd like to think, oh, perhaps that venture into the market square and have a coffee and just sit and watch the world go by and soak it in, see what the new, see how it feels, if you like, sitting in the new market square. Cobbles aren't there now, which is handy for wheelchair users. I'm sure that many wheelchair users will be quite relieved that the cobbles are gone. Equally, I mean, it is a shame that those cobbles are gone, but I think that there comes a time where you've got to accept that, the massive inconvenience of those cobbles to pedestrians, wheelchair users, perhaps even possibly blind people, and people that are unsteady on their feet. I secretly, they're all saying, "Oh, I'm so glad that Market Square is flat now, got a smooth surface on." Um, Although cobbles are lovely, but yeah. So let's remember that. So Northampton became a town, properly, officially a town in 1965. But of course, we've existed before then, back to 1675, and so that fire started in St Mary's Street and spread. And you can imagine a busy market square, building all of that would have been wood, wouldn't it? So if a fire made it to that market square, you can imagine, especially with windy westerly winds that day, it's gonna like a pocket of fire. That would have been quite intense, I'd imagine, in the market square going back then. That would have been quite scary, you'd imagine, actually, wouldn't it? And that would have also the buildings surrounding the market square, that they were devastated. So mm, yeah, it is quite scary, all these sort of things, like massive, huge fires. But I think it's fair to say, name me a really big place in the world that perhaps hadn't had a significant fire in their history. I think it's sort of par for the course when you got massive. Well, I say massive. It's a big town nonetheless. I mean, even going back then, I'm sure it's considered a reasonably big place. And when you got big places made of wood and things like that, and those unfortunate events like sparks starting in St Mary's Street and a bit of westerly wind to fan it all, and then all of a sudden there we are. Northampton had its turn of having a great fire. Um, Cost 11 people their lives, and this might sound bad, but I expected that number to be higher. To be fair, however, 700 families were left homeless. Dear me, that's a monumental humanitarian crisis that was considered at the time, and of course that is 700 families being left homeless. Escape and Sanctuary record a story of Welsh House on the Market Square, which was one of the few buildings to survive. Oh, how about that? So there's me speaking of how how devastating how scary that fire would be on the market square. A building did survive it, called Welsh House. Uh, that served as a sanctuary, in fact, for those escaping the flames. So yes, there would have been people in that market square being who were really scared, probably, and those that saw that building was okay, rushed there and sought shelter, and that building did survive. So anyone choosing that place of shelter was rather fortunate and wise. That's great. So that formed a sanctuary, if you like, for 11 people died. Now you see, I did expect that number to be higher, and 11 people is not. That's not nice, is it? Honestly, I did expect more somehow. Uh, oh, how about this? So at the time, there was a king called Charles, much like now. Now that Charles, the king at the time, he donated 1,000 tons of raw timber to Northampton in an attempt. What it did, halve the town's taxes for 7 years. He did that for 7 years, and that aided the reconstruction of the town after the Great Fire of London. So the king, bless him, made a real effort there to help things out. So he reduced the taxes and donated timber to help the construction of the new town. Now, what scares me is it's a shame that there wasn't any bricks weren't more prevalent and things like that, because that solves great fires, didn't it? Generally speaking. Explain the lasting legacy of the Great Fire of Northampton. Let's have a look at this. Explain the lasting legacy. The new urban plan in the rebuilding of Northampton. This is after the fire. So I'm talking about after the fire right now. We're going to have to dip back into during the fire. This is page 2. I should be looking at page 1. But nevertheless, let's carry on, because I'm quite interested. So the architectural mandate. So the town was destroyed by fire, and they had to plan a rebuild. And new urban plan was required, of course. Oh, here we have the mention of stone and brick. Jolly good. So we had the King Charles, donating raw timber, and that halved the town's taxes for 7 years. That's a cool thing to do. I bet King Charles was popular with that decision. But I'm pleased to see here that stone and brick was used in this new urban plan to make wider, safer streets. Well, great, because we know building stuff from stones and brick is less of a fire hazard, don't we? So this is why central Northampton looks the way it does, because of that new urban plan carried out in the reconstruction of Northampton. Yes, so the Great Fire of Northampton occurred, they rebuilt, and now the layout is as it is today, as you'd know it today, because that hasn't changed. Pedestrianisation or of the Abington Street course and things like that have taken place, but largely the actual road system around the town centre is very much the same. Flammable timber. That's setting the scene. Oh yeah, so before the fire, right. Describe Northampton as a busy market town. Well, it was. We know that. The crucial vulnerability of Northampton at the time was central buildings mostly constructed with flammable timber and thatch. Yes, flammable timber and thatch. What a great insulator. Have you ever seen a real thatch roof? They're lovely, and they're really good as well. And you don't really, if you have an up to date, modern, well kept thatch house, it's not that scary. I thought fire hazards. I mean, these things are mitigated easily nowadays. But of course, essentially, a thatch roof will burn. However much you protect it, and at the end of the day, it will end up burning if in the right circumstances, or wrong, unfortunate circumstances. But yeah, that was a crucial vulnerability at the time, that things were mainly wood, wasn't it, and fat. So I think we've established that. The true date, September the 20th, 1675. So note the timing. It says noted. Duly noted, AI. Thank you. Only 9 years after the Great Fire of London. Ah, I was wondering about that. See, so 9 years after the Great Fire of London. Hmm. So in 1966, then the Great Fire of London, yeah, Pudding Lane that started, didn't it? And the St Mary Street is where things started this time around. Oh, now then, the street sparked from an open fire. So yes, sparks from an open fire at that property in St Mary's Street. Mm. And there's a star on the map. So hopefully there's St Mary's, the start of the fire, St Mary's Street. And you can see some of the devastation goes, some of the devastation extends that way too. Now the wind fanned it all this way, didn't it? But of course, some fire did go that way, and you can see the areas affected by the darkened area. Well, it's a shaded area. So yeah, a spark from an open fire. In no fires. Oh, how lovely! An open fire. Very nice. Very nice. But yes, potentially devastating. And in this case, it proved devastating for Northampton and caused the death of 11 people. Sadly, 700 homes lost. 700 people. Like oh. So this wind, oh, and not only were they westerly winds, they were strong westerly winds. Narrow streets, timber construction, and fuel sources like corn stacks and barrels of oil found around the market square. Barrels of oil, that's not something you see dotted around the streets of Market Square in Northampton today, is it? But there would have been barrels of oil dotted about, corn stacks, yeah, all flammable things that enabled the spread to go so quickly because it says explain the speed. Well, yeah, you got narrow streets, so things the fire can transfer easily from building to building. Yes, I mean when you get to the market square, I mean obviously got a big wider area, but if you've got if you've got strong wind and a big fire, yeah, that's going to be scary. That's going to build up quite big, and then you have the people seeking shelter in that building that survives in the market square. Oh, and to give an idea of the scale, so 850 buildings in the town centre, 700 of them destroyed in about 6 hours. Oh, including All Hallows Church destroyed as well. I mean, that's scope, that is, isn't it? That's some scope. Out of only 150 of that 850 buildings in Northampton survived because 700 of them were destroyed in 6 hours. Amazing, isn't it? Oh, I mean, I feel guilty using the word amazing. Amazing, wow. But I mean, we're talking about an event that is really a tragedy, very much a tragedy. Have a guess what, ladies and gentlemen? That is the data I have on it. How was this? Yeah, that's it, covered it. Whoa. So, what I'm hoping is, ladies and gentlemen, that thankfully I made the mistake of thinking that of claiming, of calling out the fire as having happened in 1965, and I'm pleased to say, having corrected that, I've learnt information here, like 1966, the Great Fire of London. But I think that's helped cement the date a bit more for me because you think 19, yeah, we know the date. I did know it, but now I think to myself, okay, that's just not long before the Great Fire. They say, don't they? But this is why historians, they're very knowledgeable people, and they find all this sort of stuff fascinating. It is fascinating, really, when you look into it. You can tell why people spend their lives just dedicated to history, can't you? When it's quite easily. But yeah, and now we're looking at Hampton as it is today, with its great, still has, of course, great network. You've got the motorways, you've got the road network, you've got the trains. And buses, of course, which I had a wee moan about, didn't I, the other night? But from Northampton, of course, you can travel by bus outside of Northampton and travel out. Pretty much anyway, what you wanna go, you're catered for, I think, pretty much, which is all good, isn't it? I hope you've enjoyed that, and I'm gonna round off there. So, thank you very much for watching if you have, and let's click end stream because it'll say your stream will stop immediately and you'll no longer be live. So that's what I'm hoping to do. Thank you. Bye bye.